Welcome everyone to the seminar today. For those of us who are joining online and might not know me, I'm Heiko Balster. I'm the director of the Institute for Environmental Futures at the University of Leicester. This is the first seminar for this semester. And I'd like to just briefly introduce Emilio Payo, who's the new seminar series convener for this semester, for this academic year, in fact. Thanks you for organizing all of this. And we are doing this in a hybrid format as last year. So we have an audience here in the lecture theater and we have an audience online. The seminar is being live streamed on YouTube, which also means it is being recorded, just to make everyone aware. I would encourage the online participants to post any questions or comments you have in the chat. You can do that during the seminar presentation or afterwards, and we will have some question and answer time towards the end of the talk. The Institute for Environmental Futures was set up to find solutions and understand better how we can respond to the planetary crisis, including climate change, the climate emergency, and the species extinction crisis. And what better talk to kick us off than the one that Edward Darling is going to give us on the LifeMap. LifeMap Trading Limited is a company. I think you're based in Cambridge. Unfortunately, you could not come here in person today, but we can make this work on Zoom. Everything is hybrid nowadays. So I'm looking forward to your talk. Edward, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to make this presentation. And I'm sorry not to be with you in Leicester. I have commitments in Cambridge later this afternoon that got brought forward. So it's sorry not to be with you. Sorry not to have met those in the room, but it does give an opportunity to be mindful of reaching a wide audience, and many of whom we won't know or won't get to speak to. But it's a privilege to be introducing our work with the LifeMap, and I'd just like to record the context of planetary crisis. It's the 10th of October, and it's currently 25 degrees. Here in Cambridge, which is quite warm. It's a privilege to introduce our work with the LifeMap. We'll be taking you through the various stages of the process that we've been working on. We'll look forward to having a discussion about potential use within the environment and other data management. And Emilio's also got a summary set of slides that are consolidated that will be available afterwards. So first and foremost, the LifeMap has been designed to sustain life for today's generations and tomorrow's, and it does that by connecting consistently the three dimensions of one life, one earth, and one people. And it has evolved over the recent years through our involvement with the MKAI discussion group. Quite a number of us have been part of the United Nations Environment Programme and the Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability. And through that format, the team of us worked on the creation of the UN Action Plan for a Sustainable Planet in the Digital Age. And the LifeMap is one of the global stakeholders in that process, which is a quite remarkable feat, bearing in mind I'm probably the least technically minded person in the world. But we've been able to meet and connect with some extraordinary people that are passionate about resolving these different issues, and it'd be great to share that. So, to start with, I'm afraid I'm going to have to reiterate the all too familiar reasons as to why we need to do these things. I probably ought to apologize now for not normally being allowed out in public. I have the capacity to make the most depressed person feel worse, so I'll try to avoid some of that. But we've got some pretty difficult issues that we need to address. And the first part was we've got global intentions, but a collective failure to sustain life. There've been decades of global strategies for change, and these have resulted in billions of dollars being spent, billions of hours being spent, but with no change to the speed, let alone the direction of travel with these issues. And the graph that we've got here is the Earth overshoot day, and looking at that relentless decline of Earth's ability to regenerate, and the impact of our industrial processes. And I've discovered recently that I'm actually quite old now, because all of the stuff that quite a number of us started with in 1992 with the Earth Summit at Rio set out some great intentions, but I'm afraid over the last 30 years we haven't achieved very much. And that's a miserable confession to those of you that are now same age that we were in 1992. And we need to be able to do things slightly better, and that's why we've been working on that. So not only have we got the fact that we've had these collective failure, but there are increasing issues as well, and humanity is consuming these resources far faster than Earth can regenerate them. And this originally threatened future generations, and when we started, all of the guys were saying, well, I think we're going to be all right, but I worry for future generations. Well, it's now increasingly going to affect our generation and future generations. We've also got the risk of contagion, and that's we've got all of these different areas are being dealt with in silos and focused areas, and there's very little awareness between different organizations of what's going on, and even within organizations about the different aspects that are needing to be addressed. And we've so far managed to get through with the planetary crises that have cropped up, have by and large stayed in their particular sector, rather than causing massive contagion and increased escalation, which is not great. So we need to address those. And then we've got another final aspect, that we've got an awful lot of knowledge, but no action. And where data exists, it's not usually accessible, it's not understandable or usable. And when reaching audiences, it's usually presented as messages and statements rather than communication and building understanding to actually generate action. And that's what we need to address, and that's why we started working on the life map. Well, we act for the public benefit. That's the first thing that the life map does. And although we've got the life map trading as an opportunity to provide services around the life map, it is designed to support projects and initiatives and activities that sustain life for today's generations and tomorrow's. And it does so primarily as a charity for the benefit of the environment and society, and through the provision of free information about these the various issues. And we'll touch on how we manage those throughout. The first part we do is looking at One Life, and democratizes issues and knowledge. It addresses the components that sustain life, aligned to the UN SDGs, in order to progress these strategic goals by actually getting some deliverable objectives, and then working through to the actual physical targets, and to do that in a way that enables the different interests to use compatible indicators to understand and show the implications of management and choice as part of a holistic program, rather than just achieving something that's a miracle in their own area but completely destroying something else. We also have the second dimension of One Earth that looks to replicate and scale activity. And the charity works with subject matter experts at global and national level to show the individual and connected issues as part of one Earth, and how to connect land and human population with management information about performance, risk and control indicators, so that they actually make sense both globally and also nationally across the global zones, and locally using global communities as a way of being able to present and connect information. And it also promotes engagement and provides integrity as part of one people. And the charity supports engagement programs across the education, policy and resource management sectors. And to do that throughout society, to distribute information, to help with the subsequent formal reporting, and also informal knowledge exchange, and making sure that as part of that integrity, to incorporate digital audit and digital compliance, to promote trust and resilience through the whole process at a time when disinformation is permeating a lot of aspects of our lives, and the ability to actually trust what goes on is becoming increasingly paramount. So if we go into each of these three areas in a little more detail, with the life map, the first dimension of one life, priority is to democratize issues and knowledge. And we've been fortunate to work with experts at global, regional and sub-regional, and also national levels to start building small squads to develop the key outputs for increasing number of zones across the world, to address these 16 components, the 4 pillars and the 2 elements that holistically sustain life. And the graphic we've got up here represents 16 out of the 17 sustainable development goals, organized around the pillars of the environment, industry, services and humanities, which resonates quite strongly with ESG, and then through the elements of land and people, earth and people, that resonates with a lot of the work within Earth Overshoot, and is focused surprisingly on life, because this work started with our involvement at Cambridge with the United Nations Environment Programme at the time that the Sustainable Development Goals were being promoted. And outside the little tight-knit algorithm of people that were involved with the Sustainable Development Goals, we couldn't actually find anyone that was interested in sustainable development, but we found that everybody was interested in life. And certainly when you work through with the groups who've subsequently been fortunate enough to work with the indigenous peoples, that life is the framework that has been the focus of all of our activities for the last few millennia, and it seemed sensible to work around this process focused on life rather than sustainable development, and the issues of the planetary crisis, to make sure that we sustain life on the planet, not necessarily sustain development. And that's, as a species, to sustain life is the fundamental role that each species has to continue its existence. So to do that, we've been providing outputs, and that's to help with the transition of data into knowledge and knowledge into action. And that covers components, objects and data sets. And for each one of these components, equivalent to the SDGs, we're able to work through what data sets exist for them, and certainly the land elements, there's quite a lot of readily available data sets with, across the environment and industry. Services, there's quite a lot of information. The data surrounding humanities is going to require greater collection of information to complete that aspect of it. But there's a lot of data available, but you have to work really hard to try and find it and get it useful. So we've been able to work with them to look at the data sets, see what vertical and horizontal connections exist. Vertical is in progressive levels of complexity, and horizontal is the connection between the different areas, and also being able to produce this information in a format that connects with people across these global zones and communities. The second part is being able to cover standards and management information, providing consistent methodologies for measurement and calibration of performance, and that's so important, as being able to find ways that we can connect information, whereas a lot of the discussions that we have with different organizations people find every reason why things can't work, and actually there's quite a few reasons why we can, and we can help make that happen. So there are standards that exist, and they become more powerful as they're used in wider areas. We've also got performance measurement and the ability to manage data that's submitted by people, and to make sure that they, within these environment programs, to make sure that that data can then be, the performance can be measured and calibrated, and we're able to provide feedback as to the performance for the different areas, which sometimes exists, and where we've worked with a lot of the organizations, it's being able to transfer that monitoring data and turn it into management information so that people can do something about it, can identify success rather than just looking at the collective misery of failure and the graphs going down relentlessly. So there's the ability to work with the with performance measurement, and then also from the science point of view is making sure that with calibrated performance, we're able to look at the ability to collect further data regarding the factors associated with performance to make sure that we accelerate our ability to improve, and share that, because there's an awful lot of stuff going on, and you frequently hear the stories of people just going, well, finding a piece of information, well, I had no idea, that's obvious, we must adopt that immediately. But they've been trying for years to try and do something completely different, and then finding that you learn from experience is great, but it's so much quicker to learn from somebody else's. So if we move on to the second dimension of One Earth, it's a method of being able to show information at a global level, and using the concept of One Earth, united every day across these 288 global zones, using every 15 degrees, both northwest, north-south, and east-west. And within these global zones, like the one we've got here for UK and Ireland, within those global zones, they're divided into these 3,600 global communities using every quarter degree. And here's the one for Leicester, and that provides a standardized and connected format for being able to connect land use, human population, and then the different data sets in a consistent format, so that they all all connect. We've also got one people, the third dimension, and that's promoting engagement and integrity. And as I said, we've got engagement programs to run across the education, policy and resource management sectors of society, looking at informing, deciding and acting with this continuous theme of knowledge, engagement and action. And so we've been able to do proof of concept with some of the life on land material in the UK, with the resource management sector and the engagement of landholders across the UK, and trialing and testing some of this process. And through the engagement and integrity, we're making sure that provide sufficient outcomes. All this stuff with any of the involved with the submission of applications is all about these outputs, outcomes and legacy. And so the outcomes from the material that's being produced is providing engagement and the distribution of information and progressive engagement programs for the education providers and students, for the policymakers and constituents in the policy sector, and the resource managers and consumers within the resource sector. And that's great in the UK using it in English, but we've been working building connections with other organisations that are committed to providing information using native languages rather than standard global languages, and particularly with those languages, the use of the appropriate words and meanings associated with the different components. We've also got engagement and action. As I said, making sure that within the distribution program of information is then encouraging those that have received this information to engage in the process, to measure and measure performance and benchmark it against the national and global standards, and to be able to apply that information regarding these different components and the performance, and to encourage change and to measure change so that it can be visualized and shared. We've also got engagement and knowledge exchange, and the exchange programs, as we mentioned earlier, collecting the secondary information about features associated with performance and particularly success. We spend a lot of time measuring why things are failing and trying to put little pieces and one at a time testing whether we can improve things by changing stuff. But there's some, despite all the headline declines and the collective declines, there's still some amazing sites doing what most of the experts can only dream of, and to be able to look at those and the suite of factors that are associated with that is inspiring for those that those who want to make amends. But it's also so much easier to chuck everything at it that we know works in some places and see if we can replicate that. So there's knowledge exchange between those involved with the formal information and channels that we've traditionally used, but also using informal knowledge exchange for the external audiences, both the traditional written and visual formats that exist, but also we've been working with some of the guys in the digital twin materials and looking at gamification, using the framework of the life map to provide the framework for some of the gamification that we've been talking about, and being able to make sure that that informal access that would reach far greater audiences is connected through the material that would be available through other channels. And then with the digital compliance and audit, right from the outset, making sure that we've got embedded digital compliance and digital audit, working with teams that have come from the finance sector and audit sector to make that have been looking at producing the same reporting process that financial audit offers by and large, and that as I said, to ensure that we develop trust and resilience in the projects and initiatives that that the life map supports to promote those. So the life map is designed to provide an ongoing legacy and to ensure that a basis is established for ongoing data distribution, engagement, action, reporting, and the management of ongoing change. First for the standalone projects and initiatives, and then with the potential to build further aspects around these projects, both in terms of the content, the extent, and the outreach. It's also to make sure that the legacy is comprehensive and to make sure that the projects and initiatives are connected within an issue and across the different issues, from the smallest data sets reaching right to the largest of the global strategies that we're aspiring to, so that they become sequential rather than isolated. It's also, legacy has to be holistic, and to make sure that we can connect projects, initiatives, right from those that are based in the smallest of the global communities, right the way through different aggregations of and combinations right through to global level. And we've been working with some examples recently with the World Wildlife Fund and the Zoological Society London with the Living Planet Index, and how to break those global headlines through into, so that they can reach down to the national zones where we've got national responsibility, and then ultimately to the local communities where action and change actually makes a real difference. And also to make sure that it's the programs are inclusive, and making sure that we can reach and connect with individuals and groups and sectors in a consistent format. And everyone talks about inclusivity, but to be able to embed that, and then to be able to show that throughout the different sectors, the different issues, and the different locations, which is hugely important. So a lot of the projects that have been designed in the past seem to have replicated a steel ball bearing. They are, a lot of work goes into them. They roll their course and then they stop, and are just permanently impenetrable. And we've worked really hard to design the life map to support the organizations and the experts and the different communities that are passionate about changing these things, so that any project and initiative is designed to connect and stay live, and to be able to promote and inspire more people to act and change. And so that's what we've been doing with this. We've got some of the aspects with the visualization that we had with the graphics that we've been using. We've got headline graphs showing the trends since 1970 and the declines of the of performance, making sure that where we've got things that are nominally going down is the information and the graphics are presented in a declining format, so they're consistently shown in that way. We're able to look at satellite imagery and using that wherever possible, again to promote a lot of the integrity in the data and being able to connect people with that. We've got indicator maps, being able to show the heat maps of relative performance, both right the way from global level through nations and down to communities, and then being able to provide supporting information and data that provides the details, so that at a community level becomes quite clear about what area of these headlines actually affects you, what can be done about it, who's done something similar to support that. And so there's heat maps, both in terms of performance, but also then using the same process of heat maps to show levels of engagement and activity across different sectors to inspire and coerce, or to show where things aren't happening and that where incentives and motivation needs to be encouraged. And with that, you've got the details of the organizations that have provided the data, the promotion of that data. We use the data's held within the original organizations and summary materials presented on the life map to make sure that the value and data protection is covered and retained within those organizations, but summary information reaches the public domain and promotes the organizations that are providing that. And we have licenses that we sign with the different organizations regarding that, the use of the data in this format, and the agreements about how it can be used moving forward. So we spend an awful lot of time trying to make something that will make people feel that there is hope. It's designed using these communities, because there are approximately 30k communities, which for most people in the world, including the UK, is the extent for most people's world. They very rarely travel out of those areas, and it gives them knowledge of what is secure in our own environments, and with the opportunity to look outwards and to how we can improve our own situation and then help others. And then also from other areas of the world, you can see where there are catastrophic problems happening, and being able to help ameliorate those. And there's a lot of the work within the United Nations Environment Programme where we started was looking at the aftermath of conflict resolution and the reinstatement of the natural world. And there was an awful lot of work about sorting things out afterwards, but we need to spend more time looking at the prevention, adaptation, and prevention. And in some cases, there will be some deep adaptation that is required. But I think I know that's 35 minutes, but that should give us 15 minutes for some discussion so I can help answer any questions you'd like. And we've got some examples of the marine life, I think, if anybody wants to have a closer look of how we use some of those data sets. But thank you for taking the time to listen through this, and there will be a summary set of slides that we can share with you afterwards, or people want to get in touch through LinkedIn or through the contacts here, then we'd be delighted to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. I'm opening up for questions. Who wants to make a start? Yes, Will.
I think, well, I've got later questions.
Oh yeah, you want to bring the microphone? We do the microphone.
to make sure. Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't know if you can hear this.
Is it switched on?
It's switched on. It's switched on now, yeah.
Yep.
Have you got any examples of the type of data that you've mapped, and then how you monitor the change from that data, and then the types of reports that you've created from it?
Yes, the proof of concept work we did was taking the working with the Life on Land component, and we worked with the British Trust for Ornithology in the UK, and we worked with them to take the breeding bird survey monitoring data and to convert it into management information. And so for 67 of the priority red listed species, we were able to work out performance levels, set above average, below average, and thresholds for top 10%, top 1%, and national abundance level. And with that information and the standards, that was great. We then, because they were split between the different habitats, we worked with CEH and for the land cover map to break that into proportional areas of the areas of woodland, freshwater, coastal, grassland, and food production, and that left two other areas of the urban areas and the uplands, for which the BTO didn't have any index. And so we went back and said, if in 1970 you'd been aware of this, what index would you have produced? And we produced one for those. So that was great. So we got those two pieces of data aligned for the first time, and the BTO also have the so we're looking at, well, that's great, but how do you connect it with people? And the BTO also have the bird atlas with the using the 10K grid squares, where there are and the list of species that are available with that. And so we were able to encourage landholders to register an interest in sustaining life. We were able to give them the details of the different land uses, land classification, or land uses in their community, and the suite of species for which they were responsible, and the methodology that the monitoring data was collected. And quite a number of the sites across England have undertaken those surveys using that methodology, benchmark their performance. They've received the first certificates confirming performance levels, rather than everything else up to that point had been discretionary. And we've had about 17 sites where species abundance has exceeded the national threshold, and we've been able to present Life on Land awards for those. So that's what we've started from the UK at community level going upwards, and we've now, through the work with the Living Planet Index, been looking at the suite of the 30-odd thousand species across the world that are in that, and how that breaks down to global levels, to the UK and Ireland, and then to particular communities and the species that connect those communities with these headline global trends, not just the national trends. Was that has that answered your first question?
That's really good. And I was really interested in how that helps to inform policy. I mean, is there a predictive element that you could say, right, if you intervene in this way, this will happen. If you intervene in another way that's historically happened, something else will happen in the future?
That's the discussions that we're having with the conservation evidence team at the University of Cambridge, to make sure we can collect the secondary data in a format that stands scientific scrutiny, and also it's just building a sufficient statistical base so that the materials, there's integrity in the material, rather than it just being a bit light and fluffy. One thing we found when working outside the science community is that most of society is really excited about the top levels of performance. Most of the statistics guys exclude all of that as outliers, and in doing that, we end up with the sorry, somebody's just dropped something down. So with the statistical outliers is that they cleared everything from that was really exciting and succeeding. So yeah, that's where the next level of being able to identify what works, the features associated with it, the costs associated with it, and then being able to incentivize that, and then being able to look at the implications of choice. And there will be clever people that will be able to look at the marginal point where the least amount of money can provide the greatest amount of change, and then whether that comes from the public sector or the private sector, and then motivating those people with the potential to do more to be able to make that investment. So that should answer that next stage of the question, and looking at of choice in land use, because the stuff we've got in Cambridge is everyone's getting very excited about carbon fens and re-wetting them. Well, the area that they're talking about re-wetting currently feeds about 5% of the produces enough calories to feed 5% of the UK population, which doesn't sound very much until you have the system that this offers, which shows that actually 3,225,012 people don't eat, and that's where we've got to start looking quite carefully. And all of the graphics that we have and the main graphs have got that relentless human population increase that is forecast to peak at 2050, and we need to figure out a way of getting through that bottleneck on the assumption that the population will decline after that. So, well, is there anybody else that, I hope that's answered that, and if is there anybody else that has a question before we come back to your list of the others that you've got?
I do have a question. So my question is, you've addressed it partially because you've said that the outcomes, that information, is kept with the original organization that produced it, which I think that's a good idea. But you said that the life map does include some summary information. Is that available to the public, or should we contact for example, should a particular contact Redlist Revival or the life map to access that information? Or...
At the moment, we've gone from a very small website for Redlist Revival through the development of this phase, and the material that we've now got. We've been talking to Natural England and DEFRA within the UK for taking this to the next level and being able to provide that interactive website where that information would just be, through the registration, would give that access to that information. And we've got stuff that we can now show, and that if we can get this through this next phase, we've got some projects overseas that we're also talking to that are looking at providing that base foundation, and then organizations will see how the other organizations have presented data, and we're having those discussions. The thing we're really trying to get is the framework for the 4 components that make up the environment: the marine life, life on land, climate, and clean water material, available as a reference point. And I think there's about 100 data sets that we're likely to work with, and we've been having discussions with the conservation guys for the biodiversity side, but certainly the environmental record centres and the data management, the new post that's being put in place for the five national data centres and how data is used and accessed. We're looking forward to, or we've started discussions with that with CEH, with the British Antarctic Survey, and we've got meetings with Southampton with the ocean guys, and discussions with HICO as well with the and the guys up at Leeds about how we can present that information too, which should be helpful for all of us that are trying to resolve these issues. And a lot of the stuff's been trying to find ways of making people collaborate, or helping people collaborate, and we've found that actually it seemed to be the exact opposite. If we can help people not to collaborate, to keep their information rather than to being able to put it into a central pot seems to be a much better way of being able to show what each of the sectors can bring, rather than and then with that information in the summary information in the public domain, then we can commission additional works with those organizations to get the money for the right people that have that information, but doing it in a way that enables it to happen, whereas at the moment it's not. And if we can achieve that, that would be a miracle. But we're certainly going in the right direction, and we've found that our approach is an awful lot more appealing, and people are having those discussions with us rather than not, which is what we found with other areas where people have been trying to do this. Does that answer what you asked?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? If there are no further questions from the audience, I'd like to just chuck in one brief question before we finish, Edward, and that is whether your platform is actually linked, or whether you're trying to link it in with the sort of 30-30 policy in DEFRA to try and protect 30% of the land area by 2030.
We have plenty of discussions with different officials that showing that we have a mechanism to help them achieve the various targets, not just for the 30-30 by 30, the natural capital and ecosystem assessments, all of the things that they are collectively struggling with. And at some point, they will realize that there is something that is available at a fraction of the cost that they're looking at the moment, that is actually going to be beneficial, not just for their delivery, but to connect with the other facets of government, and the links between as we said, with the indicators in the environment, the performance indicators, the risk indicators throughout industry, and then the control indicators throughout the services. And we have a chance of actually making something sensible that works, whichever government, whatever persuasion of government we have, it should be able to consistently link, not just across the UK, throughout government, but globally. And that's where we're having some really interesting discussions elsewhere. Be a travesty if one of the other governments somewhere else got it there first. It'd be so much easier if we did it here to begin with. But I hope that answers that, Heiko, and we will continue those discussions, hopefully together as well.
Thank you, Edward. I'd like to thank you once more for the presentation today, and we'll come to a close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So with that, thank you, Edward, for joining us, and I hope your other meeting goes well. For the people in the room, we have coffee and tea served at the back. So if you want to stay a bit longer, I'll be here, and you can talk to each other or talk to me if you like. For the online audience, thank you very much for joining us today.